Hi everyone, I'm Helen French, Director of Development and Continuing Education at NASW, New Jersey. Thanks ever so much for joining us. I'm here with Kristin Cavuto, who's one of our presenters at our annual conference that's going to be held April 30th to May 2nd at Resorts Casino and Hotel in Atlantic City. We're going to sell out of this conference, so if you've not registered, do it soon, because I reckon we've got about 10 days before we sell out. Now, Kristin's one of our breakout presenters. She's going to be presenting on Sunday, April 30th. The title of her workshop is Fat is Not the Problem, Fat Stigma Is, Caring for the Fat Client with Respect. Welcome, Kristin. Thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah. So, this workshop and the title has stirred up a bit of controversy. Why do you think that is, and have you encountered that before?
Yes, so I have done this talk for perinatal providers. I'm also a board certified lactation consultant. So every single time I bring this conversation to an audience, it's hard. It's a hard conversation. Fat phobia is one of the most pervasive and allowable forms of oppression and discrimination in our country, in the world. Certainly, 49 out of 50 states in America allow people to be discriminated against in the workplace for being fat. So it's perfectly legal in 49 states to fire somebody because of their body shape. So when we bring this conversation, it's challenging. It's challenging because so many of us have not looked at our own fat phobia, or if we are fat, we haven't looked at our own internalized fat phobia, and sometimes that's even harder.
Interesting. Before we come on air, we were talking and you mentioned that the body positive movement was problematic. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Sure. So one of the things in the talk we're going to be discussing is the difference between the body positivity movement and fat liberation. And since the conference is organized around the idea of liberatory movements, it's one of the things that's sort of important to talk about. So body positivity, that really is a movement that's been going on for, I don't know, probably the past 10 years or so. And it's funded and driven by companies for the most part. It is very much about mid-sized, slightly plump, white, conventionally pretty European beauty standard people who are cisgendered, who are heterosexual, and who just, want to be a little bit plumper than they were before and have maybe a few curves, right? It is driven by brands, it is driven by capitalism, and it looks at accepting our bodies and becoming okay with them as a purely personal problem, as something that each individual person, usually women, are asked to do for themselves. Now, on the other hand, fat liberation, which is a movement that started in the United States and in the UK in the late 60s, early 70s, along with many other liberatory movements, does not look at fatness and the problems with people having a hard time with their body as a personal problem. We look at it as a structural problem. We look at institutional oppression, just like in other liberatory movements. We center in fat liberation Black bodies, brown bodies, queer bodies, disabled bodies, bodies that are not conventionally beautiful by Western standards. And so we are looking at the liberation of bodies that are different from what, the heteropatriarchy wants us to believe is acceptable. So we're not just saying, well, I have a problem with, I don't really like my thighs, so I'm going to start to feel better about them. We're going to be talking about the fact that fat people are more likely to be sentenced to longer times in jail for crimes than thin people are.
Where's the research on that?
There's lots of great research on that. I'm happy to share my bibliography.
Yeah, no, definitely.
And that's definitely, this talk is going to be talking about those things. It's also going to be discussing how as mental health care providers, we're part of the problem. We're a big part of the problem.
How so?
Well, so just some interesting things. In the DSM-5, obesity is the only diagnosis in the entire DSM that does not pertain to either a behavior or an emotional experience.
Mhm.
It only pertains to somebody's outside appearance.
Gotcha.
So that's really interesting, right? We've now medicalized and pathologized the way someone's body looks, not how they feel about it necessarily, not their emotional experience of it, not their having trouble functioning because of it, like we do with every other DSM diagnosis, and not a way that they're behaving, purely just based on the way their body looks. We have some really interesting research that shows that therapists equate fatness with poor functioning, greater symptomatology, and significantly worse prognosis. So when we have two clients sitting in front of a therapist, a thin client and a fat client, with the exact same set of symptoms, behaviors, everything else that we're looking for as a therapist, mental health practitioners overwhelmingly assign more serious diagnoses to the fat client than the thin client, even though they have the same symptoms.
Wow.
Yeah.
Now, something that occurred to me when you was talking is you talk about people of color, people with different abilities. Could it be said that people who are fat can actually change their situation, their personal, their body, whereas somebody, a people of color, you can't change if you're a woman necessarily, etc. What do you say about that?
Well, the statistics actually really belie that idea. The success rate at keeping weight loss off for 5 years is the same as the success rate of beating metastatic stage 4 breast cancer. It's not really a thing.
Right.
We spend billions and billions of dollars a year to try again and again and again and again to do something that's virtually impossible. And it's really upsetting to hear that. That's one of the things that's actually very challenging, that section of the talk where we talk about how truly we are being bamboozled by capitalism to torture ourselves like this for something that just doesn't work.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. I've got to tell you, everyone, that Kristin's breakout session is one of the most popular. So if you want to hear more, and I do, this is absolutely fascinating, not something that we've covered before. So, Kristin, first of all, thank you so much for being part of the conference. Thank you very much for being part of this Facebook Live. Everyone, you better register. You can go to NASW-NJ.org to register for the annual conference. Like I said, we expect it to be a sellout, so get your tickets. Kristin, thank you so much. Really appreciate it.
You're welcome. I'm so excited about the conference.
Thanks.